I ate my way through treatment. Like, I'm talking, I'd eat like 2 packs of Pringles in the night whilst playing FIFA till midnight. Lived like a teenage dream life, I suppose, apart from the cancer part of it all. So my name is Rian Harvey. I'm known as the L Card online. I'm a teenage cancer survivor ×2, and I run an online platform called the L Card, where I run a podcast, Instagram, TikTok, all the things you can think of. And I'm here today to answer your questions about what it's like to have leukemia and other forms of cancer. So what is acute myeloid leukemia, and how does a stem cell transplant help? So acute myeloid leukemia is an acute form of leukemia, which is a blood cancer. And that is essentially a cancer that affects the white blood cells within your body. So it's not necessarily in a single area like you have with other cancers. It's essentially everywhere, flowing through your bloodstream. Acute myeloid leukemia is essentially given that name because it attacks the myelogenous cells, which is a form of the white blood cells. It is quite fast acting. So the white blood cells that it attacks have got quite a relatively low to short lifespan, so it's quite fast acting. A stem cell transplant is one of the best forms of treatment for leukemia. Unfortunately, a relapse rate is fairly high for acute myeloid leukemia. However, they will try that with just chemotherapy to start off with. If you relapse, and you'll be offered a stem cell transplant. If you are diagnosed with something like acute myeloid leukemia, then your consultant will chat you through your options, and a stem cell transplant may be mentioned in that. So essentially, a stem cell transplant is like switching your body off and then back on again. It reboots the stem cells which help create blood cells in your system, and it will then help you hopefully get better and stop any kind of form of relapse. Obviously, there can be complications post-transplant, but it is known as a pretty safe and hopefully curative form of treatment. However, obviously there isn't essentially a cure. It is as close to what we have as a cure as possible for that kind of cancer. How did you come to terms of being diagnosed with leukemia, especially at such a young age? So I was diagnosed originally when I was 14 years old, which of course is quite a young age. I had just started my GCSEs, kind of that year where you're supposed to kind of start learning what you can do with the world. How did I come to terms with it? It takes a while, to be honest with you. I spent a lot of my time from when I was first diagnosed to coming to terms with it just being angry at everybody and the world. And I think the problem is with cancer, you've got no one to blame. A lot of time when we have these problems and something goes wrong in our life, the first thing we do is to try and find someone to blame. And cancer, you can't, because it just happens. A key factor for me was kind of being put onto the cancer ward. Losing my hair was a big thing for me because it reminded me that actually I am a cancer patient. Before I lost my hair, I was just a normal teenager in hospital, and nobody could differentiate me other than that. For me, coming to terms with it was just accepting that I wasn't the only one in the world that had it, and there was other people around me. Chatting to other people in the ward, speaking to people that have online that have gone through it. There's so many amazing things out there now in terms of apps and charities that can connect you with other people. And I suppose that's kind of a reason why I do what I do with the L Card, is to connect other people online and help them realise that what they're feeling, number one, if it's anger, upset, even happiness and excitement at times, they're all normal and they're okay to feel it. That sense of community is really important to help you kind of come to terms with that and understand those feelings. How did it feel having to tell people that you had cancer when you were diagnosed? So the first time around when I was diagnosed in A&E. I was extremely unwell and kind of out of it for about a week, and it was touch and go for a while, actually, for about 5-6 days, whether I was going to make it through that first week or not. And my consultant kind of wasn't confident, to say the least, but I did pull through. But I was on a lot of medication, so I wasn't really with it. So the first time around, I didn't really tell a lot of people. Mum did. Put a post on Facebook and then let my school know. My school told all my friends. I know that my school got an afternoon off to sort of not grieve me, but to come to terms with the fact their friend had been diagnosed with cancer. So if they had any homework that day, then you can thank me in the future if you want to. The second time around, I did take ownership of it, because I was diagnosed and I could go home for a night, and then I went to have my treatment the next day and sort of started the ball rolling from there. I took ownership of that time. I sat my sisters down, who were all younger than me. Me and Mum and Dad told them together. I told my grandparents, who lived up the road. They came down and told them. People will give you sympathy in a well-meaning way, and it might frustrate you. Don't let any of that anger or frustration come out to start off with. Just breathe and just let them deal with it as well. You've got to understand that when you tell someone that you've got cancer, it's as big an impact on their life, not literally the same thing, but it's a big impact on their life as much as it was a big impact on yours. By the time you're getting around to telling them, you've had some time to process that information. They didn't. That when you're ringing them up and they're looking at your phone ringing and they don't know you're ringing to tell them that you've got cancer. So kind of treat it in that sense of like, okay, I'm about to tell this person something that's going to change their life and change their day. Tell the people that are closest to you first. if you are well enough, I definitely recommend taking ownership of it and telling as many people as you can. You don't want rumours circulating, people thinking that I had cancer and not knowing for sure. You don't want that happening because you'll get frustrated by that. So try and take ownership of it. Make it your cancer. At the end of the day, it's in your body. What was going through cancer treatment like for you? So I describe cancer treatment as like a really long hangover. When you're having the chemotherapy, you don't really feel anything. It's just you're sitting in bed, you might be playing FIFA, playing Call of Duty or whatever on your Xbox in hospital, watching rubbish daytime TV. And I always think that it's like, yeah, going on a night out. So when you're having chemotherapy, you feel fine. You don't really notice it. And then it's when the chemotherapy stops, like a day or two after that, you start to feel unwell. Because you go through cycles of it, it's the same thing over and over again. The first time hits you pretty hard. And then as time goes on, you get more of an understanding of what you're going to expect to feel, how you're going to feel. So, for example, for me, obviously, I relapsed. And after having 4 rounds of treatment the first time round, when I relapsed after a year of no treatment, I was kind of okay with the treatment because I knew what to expect. The very first chemotherapy is always the hardest because you don't have a clue what to expect, how you're going to react. And although chemotherapy can throw up so many different reactions throughout your treatment, even if you've reacted fairly well in the past, you still kind of have an understanding of what might come from that. It is hard, obviously, it's very difficult, but you spend a lot of time in bed playing Xbox, watching TV. You feel ill obviously at times, but you're not feeling ill the whole time. And I think that's often a misconception people have of cancer, is that people are always feeling really, really unwell. How did the cancer diagnosis affect your teenage years and growing up? So interesting question this, because I was having a conversation with somebody earlier today actually about this. We'd both been diagnosed in our teens, and we both said it's really weird because you kind of miss out on the things that you wouldn't really consider to start off with. So for me, for example, never went to prom. I've only been to 2 house parties in my life. So now, whenever anybody gives me an opportunity to do something, I jump at it. I think the problem is when you're sort of going through your teenage years, you're in that kind of scope where you're supposed to try things and you're supposed to be developing your mindset and your thoughts and your process and what you want to do with your life. When someone throws cancer into the mix of that, kind of puts a lot of it on hold. I did have a big impact on my GCSEs, so I was only in school for about 7 months of the whole 2 years I should have been for my GCSEs. I was very fortunate to still take them, and I got 7 of them, and I think part of that is because when I opened up my biology paper, it was about stem cells, and I'd had consultants telling me about stem cells for the past 6 months, so I was kind of laughing in that sense. And as well as that, my English paper was about to write a story about something that you've been through in your life, and I thought I'm going to write about cancer here because there's no chance anybody could fail me on that. So it did affect me in that sense, but I suppose it's about making light of the situation and finding the positives in things, which I'm a real big advocate for. How do you feel about people making jokes about cancer? I honestly have always said this: cancer patients have the darkest sense of humour you'll go by. This sounds really bad. The first thing that my cousin said to me when he walked into the cancer ward: "What's worse than being late for work?" I said, "I don't know." He went, "Cancer." And that's just breaking that barrier straight away. If you're comfortable with the person that's been diagnosed with it, making the jokes, if they're doing it as well, find that comfortable line with that. Comedy, we know as anything, is a really good way to sort of break down barriers around certain taboo topics. You see comedians do it all the time on stage. The funniest jokes are the ones that you're not too sure you should laugh at. And it does help. What my cousin was doing there, which we probably both didn't really understand at the time, but you look at it, what he's doing is he was coming in, breaking that barrier. He hadn't seen me since I'd been diagnosed, and he was just breaking that barrier instantly. Everyone in the room knows that cancer is a bad thing, and you don't need to highlight that because everyone knows that. So making a joke about it, making light of the situation, can probably sometimes bring about a bit more of a positive impact on the person that's lying there. Has having such a close encounter with death made life feel more meaningful to you? Absolutely. Again, having this conversation with my parents yesterday, everyone goes on about sort of racing through life and going 100 miles an hour. I've seen the finish line of life, and I've been brought very close to the finish line of life. And I can tell you it's not fun. At the end of the day, it's a full stop. I think when you get so close to that situation, you realise actually what's at stake, and also how quickly things can be taken from you. You kind of understand that you should just go through your life doing things that you enjoy doing. I think everyone says in their life, you're going to die someday, and everyone agrees, but I don't think everybody actually understands what they're saying when they agree. I know I'm going to die one day, but do you actually know that that's going to happen one day? Life and time is like your most precious commodity. When you work, you trade your time for money, and when you go and do something you enjoy, you're trading your time for experience. So it's your most valuable currency that you'll ever have. The only problem with that currency is you don't know how much of it you have, and when that currency is going to stop coming in. Understand that you're not around forever. And also with that, understand that you're very lucky to be here today. What are the best ways to support a friend or family member with cancer? Is it best to carry on as normal? To be honest with you, yeah, carry on as normal. When a friend or a family member is going through cancer, You've got to understand that you're the outlet, and also you've got to understand that you are going through it at the same pace as them. So if it's the first time you've all been through it, it's the first time that you've been through it in your role in that diagnosis, and it's the first time that they've been through it in their role in the diagnosis. So you're all going through it at a similar pace. They will be looking to you for that normality because they'll be in a very abnormal world, doctors, nurses, treatments, examinations, things they've not been exposed to before. You're the only person within that they probably will know as normal. So I'd say, crack the jokes like we said earlier, go in there and just be normal, take a McDonald's in there, sit down, watch some films on a Sunday. When you come in at the weekend, that is also the cancer patient's weekend away from the medical world. Treat it like that and let them escape from it. Update them on the gossip, take in a coffee. I'd say it's really important to open up the question and the conversation around them and how they would like to be treated. Don't feel bad about asking that question, what do you want from me? It's a really, really important question to ask anybody in any situation. What do you need from me right now? Ask it meaningfully and allow them to give an answer to you. Everyone's different, obviously, but if you do that, you'll feel more comfortable in acting normal around them and you'll be able to understand what that person wants and needs from you. And normally, nine times out of 10, it's just a bit of normality and an escape from the situation that they're currently in. What are some aspects of living with cancer that people might not be aware of? This is a good one. The diet. So the diet is essentially a pregnancy diet. You can't eat pasteurized food. You can't eat Chinese. Sucks because I love Chinese. People always think when you go through cancer, you've got to eat a really clean, healthy diet. No. The importance of when you're going through cancer is, of course, to eat healthy when you want to, but when you don't, you need to eat calories because you'll have days where you're not eating. It's where you get these kind of feeding tubes in your nose. So it's important to kind of stockpile those calories. I ate my way through treatment. Like I'm talking, I'd eat like 2 packs of Pringles in the night whilst playing FIFA till midnight. Lived like a teenage dream life, I suppose, apart from the cancer part of it all. Certain things you can't eat, going to McDonald's, like I say, asking for to be freshly cooked. Asking McDonald's sometimes to freshly cook your food is as if you just asked them to do the most impossible thing in the world. They're like, well, it is freshly cooked. Like, well, I know it's not because it sits there. I need you to cook it fresh and then give it to me straight away. But it's just about, again, being honest and being open and being clear with it and being okay with your situation in that sense. You can pick up bugs and infections a lot easier than other people because chemotherapy affects fast-growing cells, and that is essentially your immune system. Your immune system's a fast-growing system. Hence why you lose your hair as well, it's fast growing. And because of that, you can pick up bugs and infections a bit more easy than you normally would. So if someone's got a cold, for example, they should stay away, shouldn't come and see you and visit you. Always ask them, is there something I need to be aware of in this situation? Do I need to be careful with anything? Ask them, don't assume, never assume it with them. Do you worry about the cancer coming back? Yes. To be honest with you, I'll have a day when I feel unwell or I'm tired, more tired than normal. I'll be like, oh Christ, it's back. That's the first thing that comes in your head. It's called fear of relapse. And I think when you've relapsed already as yourself, which I have, my cancer came back for a second time, you do keep an eye out for how you're feeling and symptoms, etc. So you do worry about it, but that's completely normal. And people always ask me on my socials of like, when will that fear of it coming back go away? And to be honest with you, it won't. It's like one of those things that it doesn't go completely, it just gets easier to manage with time. I suppose the simple answer to that question is, yes, I do. And if you're feeling the same way, it's completely fine for you to do that as well. I use it as like a push. So when I've had like a nightmare about my cancer coming back, wake up the next day and think, right, that is a reminder for me to go and do what I can for today. What advice would you give to someone who was recently diagnosed with cancer? My advice would be that it's going to be okay. It's going to be fine. You're going to go through a very tough thing in your life, and I think it's important you understand that. This isn't going to be easy by a long stretch, but it's not going to be hard for 100% of the time. You're going to have days that are good, you're going to have days that are bad, like you do in life. Those days will be magnified because you're on a cancer ward. You're going to meet some incredible people, and it's going to open the doors for some incredible opportunities that will come later on in life. The diagnosis that everyone fears, and it's a diagnosis that no one wants to get, but it's a diagnosis that 1 in 2 people get. Unfortunately, if it has happened, there's nothing you can do about that. And you need to now attack it and go head on. Just do what you've got to do. If you've got to be selfish for a while, be selfish. Understand that people around you are going through it too. One thing that I was always quite bad at is understanding that with my sisters. I don't want to sit here and be like, I was amazing at this. I made mistakes while I was going through treatment, and one of them was understanding that other people around me are going through it too. That wake-up call came for me about 4 weeks into it, and no one knows what to do in this situation because no one's been through it, hopefully. When you get out of this, you're going to have this incredible zest for life. You're going to be incredibly hard to keep pinned down to one place, and probably a bit of a project for future employers because they'll be wanting to try and keep hold of you in the sense that you'll have this zest for life to go and do other things. Cancer will take some things from you, but make sure at the end of that, you take some things back from it, because it's a transaction, I think. It's only fair in that sense, isn't it? Thanks so much for asking me some questions today. I've really enjoyed doing it. If you want to find out more about my story, then you can head over to my Instagram page, which is the L Card. To be honest with you, it's pretty much all of that on any platform, the L Card. Here to support, here to help people. It's not just for cancer, it's for any kind of trauma. And if you're just looking to learn a bit more, and yeah, you can watch videos of me drinking coffee too, which is always positive.